Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1438B, and today's date is December 3rd, 2017, and the title of the episode is Something the Cabal Never Saw Coming That Will Shatter Their Entire Plan. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, in a previous report, we talked about Michael Flynn and how Mueller came out with this indictment about lying to the FBI and to the vice president. And really, this is a nothing burger. Now, of course, the Cabal, they want everyone to think that this is everything that they've been looking for. This is the Russian collusion. And ABC News, they went out and they went crazy with it. Now, Brian Ross, he was out there and he was saying, and he initially reported this at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I think this was on Friday, that a confidant told him that Michael Flynn is prepared to testify that the president, as a candidate, directed him to make contact with the Russians, which contradicts all that Donald Trump has said to this point. Now, this story was then tweeted all over the place, I think like 25,000 times. Other corporate news organizations picked it up. Even some of the alternative media picked it up, and they ran with it. And it turns out, well, this story was a fake story. And this never happened. This is disinformation. And it looks like Brian Ross, after his fake news report, was now suspended because they got caught in a lie. Now, this is very interesting because a lot of individuals went with this. And what we're seeing right now is the Cabal is very desperate. And they're very worried because the truth is what they're worried about. The truth will always stand tall. No matter how much propaganda, no matter how many lies they put out, it might take a long time, but eventually the truth always comes out. It might take years, but in this instance, it looks like it's coming out much, much quicker than everyone thought. Now, what's very interesting about this is they're trying to push the idea that they have something where Flynn lied to the FBI. Now, think about this for a second. Let's say Flynn was being brought up on murder charges, and they spent a year investigating. And the charges that they put out in the corporate media was about lying. Lying to the police. Well, does that show murder? No. Then you have to scratch your head and you have to start to think to yourself, after a year, why didn't they bring up charges against Russian collusion, or why didn't they bring up charges about murder after they investigated for a year? Why did they only bring up lying? Lying to the police or lying to the FBI, if you look at both cases. It's because they couldn't find anything. So they had to go with something else, because if they found nothing and they didn't bring any type of an indictment, it would look really, really bad. So what are they trying to do right now? Well, they're trying to impeach Trump. This is their main goal, is to get him out of office. I mean, they tried with Russian collusion, and through Project Veritas, we learned that the whole thing was a nothing burger. There was no Russian collusion. Actually, we found out other things where Obama spied on the Trump campaign. They unmasked people illegally. Comey lied. We have the Uranium One deal. Actually, we found out a lot of other information that the corporate media doesn't even want to touch, because they're afraid if they even start to go down that path, it would be a complete disaster. And they know this. And they would get caught up in it because they didn't report on any of it. Now remember, the news today is not about reporting the truth. The news today is about reporting propaganda that is fed to them by the intelligence agency, by the Cabal. And what's very interesting about this is that the Obama administration approved General Flynn's calls with Russian ambassador. And once again, the new presidential candidate was coming into office. He was already elected. He was already putting together his team. And during this period of time, this is when they're allowed to speak to these individuals. So that part is not even against the law or the Logan Act or anything like that. Because if it was, guess what? They would have brought him up on those charges. If you notice, they left that part out. They didn't make a big deal about it because, think about it. Trump was elected. He was putting together his administration. They started to talk to different countries, which is allowed, which every president does, their administration does, because they're getting ready to set everything up. And they were going forward with this. They can't mention this because then people would realize, well, wait a minute, there's really nothing here. Because if they mention that he spoke to him illegally, people would look at this and look at all the other presidential candidates and look at everything else and say, well, wait a minute. Everyone else did this. How is this illegal? And this is why they can't mention that. They just leave it out. They pretend it doesn't exist. But they're going to try to use this to try to impeach him. And they're going to try to link Flynn's lying, and it's not going to work out. You know why? It's because they have nothing right now. And they don't want to bring up that Obama actually gave him permission to speak to Russia. And we see right now that this whole thing is going to turn out to be absolutely nothing. Just like Brian Ross was trying to push this fake news story, and he got caught in the act. Oh, wait, he got caught lying to the American public. Isn't this what they're blaming Flynn on doing, lying to the FBI? But the FBI lies to the public. Obama lied to the public. Clinton lied to the public. George W. Bush lied to the public. Think about all the people that lied to the public. And they're making a big deal about Flynn lying to the FBI. Well, the FBI lies to everyone all the time. So right now they have absolutely nothing, and they're going absolutely nowhere with this. And this whole impeachment thing, not going to work out. This whole story, not going to go anywhere because they have nothing. If they had something, you would see charges all over the place. Charges of collusion, charges of the Logan Act, where a citizen spoke to a diplomat from another country, but he wasn't just a citizen. He was part of the administration that was coming into office, which was just elected. So all of this is not going to work. This is why they're not mentioning any of it. And right now, we can see that the whole thing is completely falling apart. Now, as we can see, the Cabal, they're not finished. They're continually trying to do whatever they possibly can to regain control, and it's not working. Actually, their organization is falling apart very, very quickly. And this doesn't mean that they're just going to die off and wither away. They're going to fight until the very end, and most likely they will use some type of an event at the end of their fight if they have nothing left. And it looks like they're getting to that point. But we can see right now they're trying to shut up many, many different organizations, news organizations like the alternative media, RT, Sputnik, you name it. Anyone that contradicts the propaganda, they need to shut them down. And we see right now is that they can't allow free press in America. Because if there was free press and people were allowed to report on the real stories, everything that has been happening in the last many, many years, well, people would learn the truth. And if people learn the truth, people would see that they've been lied to all these years. And this is why they don't want anyone out there discussing what has really been happening. Like out in the Middle East, like our economy, like what's been happening with the Uranium One deal, what's been happening with McCain, out in Ukraine, out in Syria, out in Iraq. They can't let any of this out. And this is why they've been trying to shut down all the news organizations, and the corporate media is continually trying to push the propaganda as best they possibly can. But all of this is falling apart right now. We see out in Syria right now that the Cabal has really lost there. I mean, Mattis is even recognizing that there's no reason for the U.S. to even be there anymore. They're saying, and he's out there saying, that it's time to change things up, that there's no reason to arm the Kurdish YPG anymore. There's no reason to fund them. There's no reason for the U.S. to be there. And we're starting to see everything turn right now, where people in the administration are saying, yeah, the Islamic State is finished in Syria. It's finished in Iraq. Al-Qaeda is finished. The moderate rebels is finished. There's nothing more that we can do right now, and everything is coming to an end. And we see this happening out in Syria. We see it happening in Iraq. We see it happening in Libya. We see it happening in Lebanon. And we see the Cabal, on the other hand, trying to push war any way they possibly can, but they're losing out right now. And they're losing very quickly. Even North Korea. I mean, the Trump administration, along with Russia, China, South Korea, they all knew what North Korea was doing. China and Russia came up with a plan. You know something? Let North Korea become a nuclear state. They'd have to be inspected. And the Cabal, well, they're completely finished. They will not be able to go into North Korea. We can then diplomatically speak to North Korea if they're recognized as a nuclear state, which I think eventually they will be. And they'll have inspections, and trade then will open up with North Korea. Actually, before Obama, North Korea and South Korea were becoming very, very close, and then all of a sudden they were pulled away from each other. And you can see how they tried to play all these countries against each other. And now things are coming to an end. And we see right now that this is where we need to be a little bit worried, because the Cabal doesn't want to lose their power. They've been in power for a very long time. They've been using war for a very long time. They love their system. They make a lot of money off their system. They can control the world with their system. So they're just not going to let it die. They rather get into a war, start a war, to see if they can control it after the war is over. And this is why they've been pushing so hard, trying to convince everyone that we're going to be attacked by North Korea. If we're going to be attacked, it's going to be by our own intelligence agency, our own people in government, because they're the ones who've been setting up the false flags like 9/11 and the rest. They're the ones who've been attacking the people of the United States. It's coming from the inside. It's not coming from these terrorist groups outside of the country. It's coming within to force the people into doing things they normally wouldn't do, like invade other countries, go to war, give up our rights. They've been attacking the people to make them subservient to them, and making sure through the corporate media that you do whatever we say. That's what's been happening. And their last act would be to push their entire agenda to make everyone go to war. Not just in the U.S., the world go to war. And this is part of the central banking's plan, because they want to start a whole new system after this distraction. This way everyone forgets, oh, we were at a war, we were in a war, people died, population was reduced, cities are, destroyed. You need currency. Don't worry. We have it all set up. We have gold in Russia. We have gold in China. We have the central banking system. We have manufacturing. We can set up a whole new monetary system, and we can do it right here. And this could be the reserve currency. We can run it right from here. Don't worry about it. You can borrow as much as you want. This is what they're trying to do. And at that point, the U.S. would no longer be the reserve currency of the world. This would be the reset. And of course, during this period, if we do get into a war, which they're trying to push, people would go through hardship because you wouldn't be getting supplies. Of course, they blame it on the war. But if there is no war, guess what? We're still going through it because we still have to make this shift into a new system. They just want a distraction, so they're not blamed for it. So we can see no matter which way we look at it, there's going to be a new system. What it will be, we don't know. If the Cabal and the central banks get their way, it will be their system. If the people get their way, well, the whole new system has to be developed. It might be cryptocurrency, which takes the power away from the central banks. But again, we've been on their system for a very long time. Things will break down for a little while. Credit will freeze up. Deliveries from other countries will freeze up. And the dollar will inflate until there's a new currency. People will have trouble surviving. And we'll go through the same exact thing. We just won't have the war. So we can see no matter which way we look at this, we're heading down the same exact path, which means you still need to be prepared and ready for what is coming. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.